Good evening, all. Welcome to today's class. Today, we'll look at the chapter 3 of your project proposal. It's usually called, in some discipline, they call it research methodology. In some department, they call it just ordinary methodology. And in some places, they call it methods and procedure. Whichever one you adopt in your department is appropriate. But in our previous classes, we've looked at the chapter one. What are the things that are supposed to be in chapter one? We listed the things that are supposed to be in chapter one of your project's proposal, starting from the background to the study, to the statement of the problem, to the objective of the study, research methodology, research questions, research hypothesis, the significance of the study, the delimitation and limitation of the study, and operational definition of terms. We also look at the chapter two. In the chapter two, we look at the literature review, how you can write appropriate literature review, what are the steps that are required in writing appropriate literature review. So today, we look at the chapter three, which is the methodology, research methodology. So in this chapter, mostly this chapter is to describe how you want to carry out your research or your project. This chapter is dedicated for that. That's what we call it. In some places, we call it procedure or methods. In some places, they call it methodology. It's, yeah, this is where you are going to explain the methods you want to use, the process of data collection, how you want to do anything you want to do. You mention it here. And basically, this, just like the chapter one, chapter also contains, there are some certain subheading that must not be missing. So this chapter usually contains the research design, the population of the study, the sample and the sampling technique, the procedure for data collection, and procedure for data analysis. In some cases, if your research involves using questionnaire, you will add the reliability and validity of the instrument that you want to use. The instrument in the research, you don't say questionnaire, you say the instrument you want to use. That particular that you want to use to collect your data is called the instrument. It could be questionnaire, it could be interview guide. Anyone that you want to use is called the instrument. So this chapter contains that. So I will pick one, each of these one after the other will explain it. This is just a typical example of how to write. You can see the opening chapter here, that's the introduction. It says that this chapter deals with methods and procedure adopted for the study. This is discussed under the following subheading. Then the researcher listed the subheading. So now let's start with the first one. What is research design? In this chapter, you must tell us the kind of design you want to use for your design, the kind of research design you want to use. Research design simply means the the method that you want to adopt, or the technique that you want to adopt in your study. Usually the technique that you want to use. So we have different types of research design. When we talk about types of design, we have experimental design, we have survey design, that's when you are using a questionnaire. We have interview, so it can be anyone. So whichever one you want to use, you must state it. Even when doing, if it is experimental, it can be true experimental or quasi experimental, depending on what you want to use. For those in sciences, most of the time we use experimental design. For those in arts and humanities, make use of survey. Most of the time make use of questionnaire to use survey research design. So for this particular design, the writer is using two experimental pre-test, post-test design. You can see that he stated it here, and it tells us what it involves. He said it involves subjecting the participant to performance tests before and after the administration of treatment. When we say treatment in research, it is that thing that you want to test. That's what we call the treatment. The one you are applying the test on are the treatment, while the other one that you are not giving any test is called the control. So that's for the research design. So depending on your research design can be cross-sectional design, it can be experimental, as I've said, it can be experimental, it can be surveyed research design. So here you are going to state the kind of the type of research design you want to use for your study. It has to be stated appropriately. So when we leave from there, the next thing is the population of the study. Depending on the kind of research you are carrying out, you may not need this in some research, in some discipline, you may not need this. But for if you are in sciences, in education, you may need this. You may need to tell us the population of the study. Who are the difference between I will explain the difference between population of the study and the sampling technique. The population is those people that are originally that's supposed to be part of the research. For instance, um I want to carry out the research on prevalence of drug abuse among undergraduates in Lagos State. Among undergraduates. So by the virtue of the topic, all undergraduates in Lagos State, all undergraduates in all the schools in Lagos State are the population of my study. Please understand this. All undergraduates, regardless of the school, whether they are in LASU, whether they are the they are the population of my study. So, but you know, it's not possible for me to sample to now carry out experiment on all of them. Even if I want to share questionnaire, it's not possible that I will share questionnaire to all undergraduate students in Lagos State. It's not possible. And that is where sampling now comes in. Sampling is what is the what taking a particular percentage from your population to represent the study. Since you cannot sample the whole of the study, you now take sample. Let's say the total number of undergraduates in Lagos State is 5,000. I'm just assuming. Now, okay, let's say it is 50,000. You know, it's not possible. Even if I want to use questionnaire, it's not possible for me to sample 50,000 students. So I will not take sample. I can say that I can't contact 50,000. I only want to take 1,000 or 500 students to use as my sample. So whatever result I now get from that 500, I will now generalize it on others. That is what they call sample. The sampling. You sample when you sample something, you take a small portion from a particular population. So the next one is the sampling technique. The sampling technique simply means how the method you use to take the sample that you took from the population. You know the population is let's say population is 50,000 students, and I want to take just 500 students for my study out of the population. So how do I take them? It depends on what you want to use. In some cases, we have simple random sampling technique. In simple random sampling technique, you just pick them without being biased. Just pick randomly. We have purposive sampling technique. Purposive sampling technique is that I'm picking these people that maybe I need a particular maybe out of those 50,000 students, I only need those that study medicine. That's what I want to use. Do you know that? So I will now purposively select medicine students. That's purposive sampling technique. I've explained simple sampling technique. That's when you just pick randomly without checking their gender or checking anything. So what for purposive, you choose them because they have a particular quality that you needed for that study. That's why you are picking them. So what you also have convenience sampling. In convenience sampling is that maybe I want to I'm still working on undergraduates in Lagos State. And you know that for now there's strike. Definitely most students will have gone home. So when I got to the hostel, I only picked the people I saw around. Those are people that are convenient for me. The people that are available at that time, those are the one I pick. In that kind of sampling is called convenient sampling. And there's another sampling that I may want to just pick So maybe I want equal number of male and female. Let's say I want to pick 500 students, and I want them to be equal number of male and female. You know, if I use simple random sampling technique, if I pick randomly, I may not achieve that purpose. I may not have that achieve objective of picking equally. I want 250 boys, 250 girls. So that's another sampling technique that we will use to pick them. So that's for sampling and sampling technique. So the next one is the instrument for data collection. I have explained this. In research, we have instruments. If it is experimental research, maybe you are trying in the lab, or your petri dish, your all those ones are the instrument that you use. But if your research is maybe survey, you are sharing questionnaire, that questionnaire that you shared is your instrument, is your research instrument. And maybe if you are using interview, that interview guide, maybe you have somewhere that you write all the questions you want to ask. That interview guide is your instrument for data collection. In some research, for those that are in arts and humanity, we have a source. They use source of data instead. We have two sources of data. It can be primary data or secondary data. When we say primary data are data that you collected from the source directly, or you collected it from somebody that was at the scene. That's primary data. Let's say that I want to, for instance, I want to share questionnaire to collect information. That one is primary data because I was the one that went there, or I sent somebody there to collect the information directly. When you talk about secondary data, these are data that you get through a third party. Maybe through the newspaper, you got information from the newspaper. No, that is secondary. Maybe the CBN statistical bulletin that have all the record. That one is secondary data. Let's say you got it from the textbook. That's another also secondary data. Somebody wrote it, somebody that was there related, that's a third party. So in projects that has to do with art and humanity, those in art, to be they normally use types of data instead of instrument for data collection. So but for this one, because this one is an experimental design, so I have to state all the instruments I use: the weighing scale, the stadiometer, the whistle, and the light. So also you may need to state the procedure. If it is experimental, you need to state the procedure, how you carry out the measurement that you took. Like for instance, this person is talking about he took the blood pressure, how he took the weight, the height of the height, the weight. And you will need to, you also to inform us about the procedure for the cardiorespiratory endurance test. All these are all that are contained in your chapter 3. Also in the chapter 3, you have to tell us the procedure for data collection. How did you collect your data? There are procedure that you must put in place. One of the first procedure is that you must tell your respondents or your participants, if it is a survey or experimental, you must tell them the objective of the study, and they must agree to participate in the study before you can share your, you don't force them into the research. They must participate willingly in the study. If your research is in arts or humanities, those in arts, most of those in those one, you don't do anything experimental. You will tell, they usually use secondary data. In that case, you will tell us how you are able to obtain your data. Maybe you went to CBN to collect their record from 1999 till date. Maybe you went to National Bureau of Information to get the data. You must tell us where and how you are able to get that data. And use that is this procedure for data collection. After that, you may also need to tell us the procedure for that your data analysis. This is also very important. We must know when you collect data, The next thing is that you have to analyze it. You must tell us the procedure you use for your data analysis. Most of the time, we use SPSS for those in social sciences, in education, and in art too. But for someone in management, we make use of those in management. They use time series data. Their own data collection is different. If they have to check from the bullet, they use another form of statistical package. Mostly they call it eView. That's what they use. There's a popular one. So, but for others, SPSS is very common. And you must tell us how you want to collect your demographic data, what you want to use to analyze your demographic data and your influential statistics. Where here in this example, the writer is telling us that he use t-test, chi-square, and analysis of variance to what to test his hypothesis, and he also use Duncan multiple range test to for mean separation. These are all that you need to be in your chapter 3. So for you to write a good chapter 3, which is the sharp methodology, all what I have explained here should be inside it. Although there may be some little variation from department to department, there may be little, but that still have to follow this particular pattern. Maybe in your own department, maybe you don't use one or two of these, or you have something that you also add more to it. But basically, these are the basic things that are expected to be in your chapter 3. So I hope we understand this. Please, you need to this chapter 3 is very, very important, because once your methodology is wrong, definitely the answer the your result will be wrong. If you don't follow the right methodology, don't use the right methodology, then it will going to affect the result. So it is expected that you use the appropriate method, you use the appropriate instrument for collecting your data, and you use the appropriate method for analyzing your data before you can arrive at what appropriate answer. So we're going to stop this for this class here. And with this, we have come to the end of the chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3. By next class, we'll move to data analysis.